What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of We Run This. I am Chris Illuminati. With me, as always, is Nick Domingo. Nick, what's up, my friend?
Not much, brother. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I went for a run today. I feel like I got my legs back. I feel like the legs are slowly coming back, and I think I know what it is.
What's that?
Well, it's a combination of two things. One, I'm not running as much, like daily, and two, probably a month or so ago, I've really started doing legs in the gym.
There you go.
Like legit, like go on the squat rack like I'm a dude in Zubaz or in cutoff shorts. I'm like although I did hurt myself picking up one of the weights on the squat rack. So you know the squat rack where you like kind of put the weights on each side and then it kind of straps you up on your shoulders and you push up. Okay, so on that, just because people are doing a lot of heavy weights, they don't do the 45-pound plates. They do the 100-pound plates. And 100 pounds is a lot. You don't realize how much 100 is when you're like sliding it off that thing and putting it on. So I like kind of slid and it kind of took me. And I was like, and then I tried to like catch it, which is the dumbest thing in the world. And I kind of like tweaked. And then other than that, I've been fine. So I think it's really the leg thing that's really helped out.
Nice. Well, one, you need to grow a mullet, if you're going to do the full Zubaz pants, man. Like, you're working on it. I know your hair is.
No, I cut it. I cut
it.
I
was going to say, it looks good on the side.
Yeah,
it's
can't. Yeah.
On the top. What's going on? What we have going on in the back? You
Nothing.
Need the full mullet.
There's nothing going in the back.
But it's funny you mentioned the gym because I'm like you, biking has been my big vice lately. And I've actually seen a huge increase in my endurance and my time when I run on the days that I'm not biking because I'm doing these 30, 35-mile bike rides. And when I go running for 7 miles, like I'll go thinking it's going to be miserable and try and knock out like 3 to 4 miles. I end up doing like 7 because I just feel so good. I look at my time and I'm like, damn, like my quads aren't on fire. My calves aren't on fire. So you and I might be onto something, man. This little cross-training kind of thing almost, right? It's a new thing.
Are we onto something, or are we finally listening to, like, every article that's ever been written ever?
Yeah, basically. We're
onto something.
We're starting something new called cross-training. It's going to improve your entire workout.
I don't know if you've heard of this. We should make a combination of it's a cross that keeps you fit. Maybe there's a word we could make.
Yeah, what could it be?
We'll work on it for the next episode. But the guy we're talking to today, like he'll take our 7 miles and make it look like absolute nothing. We're talking to ultramarathoner Dylan Bowman. The guy is a beast. I mean, he's run and placed in so many races that if I listed it all, it would take up half the podcast. But we talked to him about a million different things. Anything that stands out to you as your favorite?
I mean, I just loved towards the end when he talked about, he gave the elevator pitch and he rediscovered that love for running and then is now inspiring people like you and I to actually go out and try and run an ultra marathon. I think super powerful, super inspiring guy, and really enjoyed the talk. And it's crazy, when you and I spoke at first about interviewing him and getting him on the podcast, I think your first description of him was, dude, he's the real deal. And I think after talking to him, he absolutely is the real deal. Guy knows about running, has experienced it all. So it was great to talk to him.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting for listeners to see if he actually convinces us to do ultramarathon.
Oh yeah,
that's not till the end.
We should do a poll and see how many people would actually consider, after hearing his pitch, actually consider doing an ultramarathon, because I'd be interested. I hearing him talk about it, you get that feeling running marathons, but 100 miles is just so much of a bigger event. It has to be 10 times as gratifying when you cross that finish line and get that support.
Notice this is coming from the guy who won't even legit run a marathon, and I'm considering a ultramarathon. So I jumped right over.
Do it big. Just anyone can do a fucking marathon. Yeah. Do it big. Go 100 or plus, bro.
Yeah. I mean, I see some of the people that have medals out there for marathons. I gotta go the next level.
Exactly. And get pizza at the end of an ultra marathon and have zero shame about it.
Yeah, right. And he talks about the end of the ultra marathons, which is also one of his selling points, but we won't ruin it for you. So let's let's jump right in and let's listen to everybody, listen to us or talk to us. What am I trying to say here? We talk to Dylan Bowman. That's what I'm trying to say. I think I got all. I'm still trying to think of the CrossFit word. Oh, there it is, CrossFit.
CrossFit, there it is. Weird.
Let's name it CrossFit. Oh my God! All right, let's go copyright that and make our millions, and we'll talk about it later.
All right, man, go get some cereal in you, like stat.
Yeah, I'm starving. We are here with Dylan Bowman. Dylan, what's up, my friend?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on. Good to see you.
You know, before we jumped into this, we were doing our homework on you and everything, and I feel like every time you get introduced, you are Ultrarunner Dylan Bowman. So did little kid Dylan Bowman think that's what you'd get introduced as when you got older? Like, what did you think you'd do as a kid?
You know, it's a funny question because I always did want to be kind of like a professional athlete, but you know, obviously when I was a kid, I had no idea what ultra running was. It wasn't really a thing until, you know, more recently. I was a big team sport, both fan and player growing up. I found most of my success playing lacrosse, which I played through high school and college. And then after college is when I got bit by the running bug. And I realized that I had some talent for it and realized that I had a real deep passion for it. And of course, when you see yourself improving at something, it just becomes super addictive and you start having some success. So to answer your question, no, I would absolutely never have guessed that this would have become my lifestyle and my livelihood. But man, it's been an awesome ride.
Now, you mentioned something in there that actually got me into running. Like I played soccer all growing up, basketball, baseball. You know, you run so much during soccer. You mentioned for yourself lacrosse. How did that inspire you to get into running? I mean, when your lacrosse career ended, were you like, it's just a natural transition?
Yeah, so like I said, I was always a huge fan of sports, and it was always like what drove me. And as a team sport athlete, those of us who have been lucky enough to play on teams, you know, there's just an amazing friendship and camaraderie that happens there. And going to practice was always like my favorite part of every day, you know, even beyond like the actual competing. You know, I don't have this like internal drive to, you know, win at all costs or anything like that. I definitely am competitive, but it's just much more about that daily pursuit, right? And so that's what made it really easy for me to take my field sport experience and become, you know, a semi-proficient runner pretty quickly because I just had that dedication, right? And I had that drive to do it every single day. And with running, consistency is so important, right? So if you have that drive to get out every day that I had through years and years of being a lacrosse player, it was really easy for me to start improving. And once that happens, of course, it becomes really addictive. And, you know, for me, I was actually thinking about this morning, you know, as I get older and I start to think about my motivations are really starting to change. And I'm still very competitive, want to be competitive for as long as I can, but really also want to like help leave the sport in a better place than I found it. One of the things that really motivates me, you know, as I move along in my career is helping other field sport athletes find that it really does translate really well. And there's a few other examples of people like me who've been able to transition to professional running after soccer or lacrosse backgrounds. And so giving people tools like that or motivation or sponsorship, things like that would really give me a lot of joy.
So to follow up, what are you doing to kind of leave your mark on that? How are you inspiring people to get into running from those sports?
Well, talking to guys like you is one thing for sure. You know,
Great answer.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for the people who follow me on social media, they know that I'm not only a big fan of lacrosse and running, but of all sports. And I guess that's one way that I've been doing it, but I have plans for like how I would want to do it in an ideal world going forward. And that's more like, you know, I'm working on some stuff right now that I'm trying to get off the ground, and who knows, maybe that would lead to an opportunity for me to provide, you know, some kind of sponsorship or funding, or, you know, obviously I have a lot of good relationships too in connecting young athletes who are interested in, you know, maybe they're not good enough to be professional soccer players or professional lacrosse players, but they have the fitness and they have the motivation and they have this curiosity and this like exploratory kind of spirit that it takes to be good, especially at trail running. And so, yeah, that would be something that would just give me so much joy if I could, you know, at some point give scholarships to young athletes who are coming out of a collegiate soccer or lacrosse background or any other team sport background who are interested in making a run at competitive or maybe professional running. If they have that talent and that drive, giving them the tools and resources and, you know, coaching and experience and all the stuff that I've been able to gather in my career. Man, that would be so fun. That'd be so fun.
Do you think you'd be able to, if you saw like a lacrosse game or a soccer game, you know, if you watched it, do you think you'd be able to pick out the kids who'd be good at ultra running?
100%. Yep.
And how would that be? What would you look for?
The people that can run well. Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So actually, you know, it's funny because when you know, when I was playing lacrosse in high school, I was more of like the quarterback on the offense. You know, I handled the ball. I, you know, sort of initiated the offense, was a good passer and goal scorer. And as I transitioned into college, where we had more talent on the offensive end, I found my role where I could contribute more was as the hustle guy. So my role on the team was basically to cover ground on the field, to hustle for ground balls, to, you know, run and transition, play offense and defense, and basically just be like the motor, you know. Mm-hmm. And people recognized that you know, that was like my role on the team. And so now when I watch field sports, especially lacrosse, you know, I'm always looking for those guys, the hustle guys on the team, because, you know, they not only, you know, I also think they're good teammates. And that was always something that I took pride in too. Not only did everybody know I was going to work hard, but, you know, being a good teammate too. It just goes back to what I was saying about what makes team sports so special, just those relationships and, you know, the battles you go through together.
So obviously running is a big community, but it's not, you know, when you're out there, you're by yourself. You know, it's very self-motivating. It's very almost, you know, just a mental escape from things. But you know, both your answers have talked about the camaraderie and the relationship with your teammates. So how do you get that through running? Because it's not obviously there.
You know, this is a great question. And, you know, specifically in the ultra running community, which is where I have found my niche, there's an amazing camaraderie that happens between competitors and between the family members of competitors. And, you know, all runners can identify with this idea of like, once you kind of like go through something so powerful, like running a 100-mile race, for example, there's like this identification that you have with the other people that have been through that and crossed the finish line that gives you this natural bond forever. And so like the guys that I race against have become some of my best friends, you know, and we travel around the world. We see each other in these far off places. You know, we have our good days and our bad days. We compete really hard when we're on the race course, but at the same time, like I know their wives, I know their parents, I know their kids, and, you know, we see each other only a few times a year, but whenever we do, it's like, you know, there's friendship and it's born from that recognition of like, hey, I know what you've been through and I've been there too, and I know what it takes, and it just forms this amazing bond. And then as it relates to like my personal team, like in trail and ultra running, you definitely do need a little bit more support, even though my daily grind is mostly solo. my wife is a huge supporter and travels with me. And when she does, like, it's a huge advantage, because she knows what I need when I need it, the kind of like encouragement that it takes to keep me motivated. And, obviously have a lot of friends and family and sponsors who I also view as being part of this greater support system. So even though it is a solo pursuit, it still kind of has some of that team sport vibe to it.
You mentioned the mental there for a minute, and on the podcast a lot we talk about the mental part of running. And when you say to a person, if they're a person that runs every day or a person that runs just, for fun on the side or whatever, when you say to them 100-mile race, I've found that there's two camps. There's a no way and there's a, okay, I'll think about that. Do you feel like you could ever take the no way and move them over, or once you have that in your mind, you're just never going to switch?
Yeah, so I would posit to you that there's also a third camp, and that is the people who the first time they learn about it, they say, I am going to do that at the first opportunity that I have. And that was the camp that I was in. And that's how I sort of like became so interested in the sport, was learning about the Leadville 100. And honestly, the minute I learned about it, it became my life obsession of, I am going to do this race. And of course I was like 22 years old at the time, fresh out of college, still partying way too much. And, it was just like the most powerful, mind-blowing thing to actually put myself through that the first time. But to answer your question, like, the way that you take the people who say absolutely never, no way, it's not for me, I don't have what it takes, the best way to kind of debunk that myth would be to take that person to the finish line of a 100-mile race. And especially, the last 2 hours or an hour before, the official cutoff of the race. At most events, that's when the majority of the participants finish. So, like, for example, if you go to the finish line of the Leadville 100, for example, their official cutoff time is 30 hours, right? The winner usually comes in about 16 and a half hours. So, the winner finishes, goes to bed, can come back to the finish line. In almost all cases, the winner and the top finishers will come back for that last hour because it's so special. And the people that you see coming in that last hour of a 100-mile race are just like the most normal, average, and I don't say average in a disparaging way, but they're just normal people, right? But they have like a curiosity to push themselves, and they're not like the most naturally talented runners, but they have this determination to get to the finish line, and that's the most important thing. So like when somebody new finds the sport and asks me for advice, it's always like to understand that it's much crazier, or it's much less crazy than it sounds, to put yourself through something like that. It's definitely hard, but you can do it. And as long as you have the desire to do it, I'd absolutely recommend it to anybody. It's the most powerful, amazing experience. Nobody ever regrets it. And you prove to yourself that you're much more than you thought you were when you started. It's amazing.
So you mentioned the Leadville, 100, which was your first ultra. And for someone who's done one full marathon and a bunch of halves, I know what training's like. I could tomorrow run four straight days, increase my mileage, and knock out a half marathon in a week. Yeah. There's obviously more prep for a full marathon. How do you, especially that first one, how do you prep to do 100 miles? And what are the changes to your body? What are the changes to your diet? Like, what does your day look like to get that done?
So I'll tell you my approach, but it's not necessarily what I would recommend, right? So again, I was like 22 at the time. I was very much like new to running, was carried by my lifetime as an athlete and my desire to compete more than I was on experience, right? Or on making good decisions and training. I didn't have a coach or anything like that. And luckily at the time I was living in Aspen, Colorado. So I was living in the mountains and just naturally getting out the door every day, running up and down some mountains. And because I had this lifetime experience of being an athlete and a general good level of fitness and the drive to be competitive, it set me up for a lot of success. The thing that I think people often get wrong as it relates to 100-mile racing for sure is this idea that it's quadruple the distance of a marathon, therefore I need to train 4 times as much. That's just not true. Of course, you definitely do need to do some long runs in training, especially, in those critical weeks leading up to the event. But it's not like you need to put every other piece of your life on hold, right? As I said, most of the people who do this sport, most of them have families, have real jobs, and it's very much like a lifestyle pursuit. And that's a message I try and get across all the time, is like, the training necessary to get through a 100-mile race. Of course, it's great if you can devote your life to it and do it on a professional level and, sleep in and run long miles every day, but it's not like you have to. And getting connected with a good coach who knows that and has experience coaching athletes that have outside life obligations is a great place to start.
So really quick, I'm sure you're going to jump in, Chris, but I want to know, what's your longest training run for 100 miles? Because, that, again, you said it, the winner comes in at 16 hours and, 30-hour mark at Leadville. So, like, where are you in training that you're like, this is going to be a full-day thing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So what my coach and I do is we measure all of our training in time rather than in miles. So leading up to a 100-mile race, usually the longest run that I would do is probably like 7, maybe 8 hours in duration. And really, honestly, I would do like one of those. And of course, like I do it professionally. So, it's important for me to do that more so than it would be for most people who come to the start line. When your ambition is to win, of course, you got to get through some of those bigger training runs. But one of the things that has really helped me, I think, in my career is doing these sort of like mini concentrated training blocks. So instead of like doing 1 8-hour run, right, I'll do 3 big days in a row. And I always try and make it sort of like adventurous also. So for example, a couple years ago, I mapped out this 3-day, 2-night circuit outside Aspen, Colorado, that connected 3 classic mountain towns, one being Aspen, the second being Marble, Colorado, which is this tiny little backcountry town, Crested Butte, and then back to Aspen. So my wife drove around, we got Airbnbs, she took our dogs for her own little adventures, that we'd have dinner, sleep in a warm bed. I'd get up, run to the next town, etc. And those days were big days. I think they were between like 5 and 9 hours each. But it had this like adventurous component to it. It was all about kind of like just having time on my feet. So doing those back-to-back long runs is a great way to also kind of season your body to cover that super long distance.
I have a 2-part question that involves that. When you touched on the food, because I'm fascinated by that part. 1, what do you eat after a 9-mile run or a 9-hour run? 2, walk us through what your actual daily diet is.
Mm-hmm. So again, if you ask this question to 100 people, you're going to get 100 different answers. I am very much on the side of the spectrum of that I don't put a lot of thought into what I'm eating. I
like you already.
Yeah. Well, I should say I definitely do eat healthy. My wife grew up vegetarian, and since meeting her almost a decade ago, that she's really improved that part of my life, and it's definitely helped me as an athlete. We eat mostly vegetarian at home, but when you get done with a 9-hour run, I'm absolutely down to eat a whole pizza and have 3 beers, and
a salad's going to get it done.
Exactly. No, I'm not going to have like a nice arugula salad at that point. So, like there's a time and a place for indulgence, and I'm definitely somebody who takes advantage of those opportunities. But yeah, most of the times it's pretty clean, mostly plant-based. I owe a lot of that to my wife and her delicious cooking.
Did you notice a lot of differences right away from switching to more plant-based or more vegan?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely I did. And also just like having a little bit more diversity in my diet, when I was just kind of like a young single guy, it was my diet was sort of like 5 different things, it was like scrambled eggs and bagels and cereal and so to have somebody who had a little bit more skills and a more, I guess, mature palate than I did, introduce new foods that also happen to be a little bit more healthy. It definitely had a positive impact on my performance.
Can you name one?
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Real quick, can you name one thing that she makes that at first you were like, that is not going to taste good, and then it ended up tasting good?
Well, one thing that she's definitely brought me around to that popped into my mind first are lentils. So, at first, it's just like this kind of boring legume, but her argument is, oh, these are packed with protein, right? They're like beans, basically. And it seems like just a boring dish. It's like if you're just eating like a bowl of rice, right? And yeah, basically fast forward to this week, she makes just like this huge bowl of it. And we usually have something like that around that I can just kind of like snack on, that we can just kind of snack on. And now I can't get enough of these lentil salads she throws together with a bunch of good vegetables and stuff. So if my 22-year-old self had no idea what the hell lentils were, and now I can't get enough of them.
So I'm so curious on a personal level when you mention cereal and scrambled eggs and bagels as like your breakfast, because I'm 36 and I'm still eating like you did at 22, and my fiance gives me so much shit about it. She's like, dude, you need like natural fiber, not like Fiber One bars to get it, and like cereal to fill you up in the morning with like water or Gatorade. That's not gonna do you well. So like, what would you recommend me get into like every morning? Like, what are you eating each morning that is a healthier alternative to what I'm currently eating?
So I think a good thing to think about, and this is also something that I think is really important, is to front load your calories in the day, especially for me as an athlete, because I like to train first thing in the morning. I operate so much better when I have that sort of like early fueling. And of course, nowadays, the hot topic is like this intermittent fasting stuff where people like don't eat until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I find that has a really detrimental impact on my training. But of course, you don't want to like get up and smash a bowl of cereal. What you could do instead is like have a banana and almond butter, or like a smoothie, which I think is really good because usually when you wake up, you are somewhat dehydrated, and smoothies do a really good job of rehydrating you, but also kind of dumping a lot of good vitamins and minerals into your system. First thing in the morning, the first part of your day, which I think sets you on the right track for the rest of the day. Other things that I have for breakfast, a lot of times I'll just have like avocado toast or like peanut butter toast and banana, something simple like that fuels me for my training. And then, usually then afterwards, midday, I'll have kind of a bigger meal, usually like kind of a bigger salad or like a plant-based burrito, or oftentimes some eggs and toast. Again, you could ask the same question of 100 different people. Some people I'm sure would say you need a little bit more plant or animal-based protein, and I'm not totally opposed to that either. It's just we usually don't have that kind of stuff in the house, so I don't really eat that way.
Don't get to indulge in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're not like Nick with 6 different types of cereals in his.
Dude, it's a problem. I mean, I'm kidding. I go to the cereal aisle at the grocery store and I'm like, all right, which one did I have last week and which one do I want to try now? And it's bad. I mean, I get so much shit from my fiance who's gluten-free because she has celiac that she's like, this is what you need to eat, man. Like, you're not 18 anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally was the same way. I used to just smash honey bunches of oats like they were going out of style. You know, I still kind of like fall prey to this too. Usually it's like I get some granola at the local Whole Foods or whatever, and it makes you feel like it's not really cereal. And then you look at the back of it and it still has a whole bunch of sugar and stuff in it.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a time and a place for that. I think honestly, people talk about diets and stuff a little bit too much. As long as you're enjoying what you're eating and, you know, you understand kind of like the pros and cons of what you're eating, I think most people will tend towards making the right decisions more often than not.
I think one place where people get hung up on this, and we've talked about this before with a couple different guests, people, they'll do well, I run just so I can eat. And I used to be one of those people. But what happens is, so you're running just so you can eat, and you're eating these not great things, and it's affecting your running. And so it's making your runs worse, which then you're not running as far, as fast, burning as many calories, and it just gets into this cycle. Whereas if you kind of splurged a little bit and maybe had a couple cheat meals here and there, but like you said, if you're going out and, you know, running 7-8 miles a day and then going home and pounding a pizza, like the 7 miles, they're pretty pointless. Like if you're just running, just eat that pizza.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it just depends on what your goals are and like, yeah, how disciplined you want to be, right? Like, cause I'm not the most disciplined person. Like I love having a nice IPA or a couple, and I know that they're not great for me. I'll eat pizza and stuff, but the idea is like, if you're doing that 6-7 days a week, you're not going to reach your goals. Yeah. You're not going to reach your goals as an athlete, you know, doing that. But if you can be on the straight and narrow, say like 5 days a week and eat mostly healthy foods and eat at the right times and not too much, then when you smash a couple IPAs and eat a whole pizza, you know, it's not going to set you back in your training as much as it would if it was like a habit.
Now that I'm starving, I want to switch topics for a minute.
I know, I'm just like pizza.
Now I'm thinking about Nick's cabinet and what's in there and honey bunches of oats. So let's kind of change topics for a little bit. While I was doing some research on you, I read an article not too long ago in Ultrarunning magazine. And in the article, it touched on how you kind of, for a little bit, lost your love for running. You were kind of like on a downward slope. Can you talk about that and what happened there?
Yeah, happy to. So 2019 was a tough year for me, for sure. You know, obviously 2020 has been tough for everybody, but 2019 was like the hardest year of my career for sure. It started mostly because my wife and I, we had moved away from where we had lived for a while in Marin County. We ended up back in Colorado for a little bit, which always was sort of like this temporary arrangement. But, you know, I guess I underestimated how much just uprooting my life was going to impact me on a personal level, on an internal level. And so I had this just like general feeling of not being like anchored to where I was. And I learned that it's really important for me to like feel at home somewhere. Like I love traveling and racing, and there's nothing more that I love than being adventurous. But I think in order to really enjoy that, I need to know like that I have a home base. And we'd sort of lost that feeling for a little while. And it just sort of like put me on this unbalanced footing for a while. And then because of that, at least I think because of that, I don't think these things are totally unrelated, but I started getting injured for the first time my whole career. You know, even going back to when I was a lacrosse player, like I never missed a practice, let alone a game, due to injury. And in 2019, in April, I came out to Portland, Oregon, which is where we live now, to do a little training camp to get out of the snow in Colorado because I was getting ready for a race in the Canary Islands. And the first day of my training camp, I took a bad step and fractured my left ankle. And I had already been feeling like pretty down on just like a personal emotional level for a while. And, then when you break your ankle and you're faced with several months of, real rehab and recovery to get back to any semblance of normalcy, it was just really, really hard for me to handle. And then, also a couple months later, because I wasn't running, I went out for a bike ride, crashed my bike, separated my shoulder, got a concussion. And so like my physical body was sort of like breaking down at the same point where I was like feeling really bad on an emotional level. And so it was just like a super, super tough year, right? And especially because it was the first time that I had really experienced injury, you have these sort of like identity crisis moments, especially when you're doing this on a professional level, right? Because like 2018, I had the best season of my career. I was crushing it, won awesome races around the world. And, again, it sounds silly, but like, then you renegotiate all your contracts with your sponsors and you get a little bit more and you start to feel like you're this important person and you've got it all figured out. And then you just get brought down to earth. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, I'm an absolute fraud. I don't deserve what I get. And, it's never coming back. You tell yourself all these stories. And so, what I'm trying to kind of communicate is that like, I had this both like physical body breakdown and this sort of like internal life breakdown. And luckily, like any really hard thing, you sort of like learn from it and you get through it. And luckily, I was really able to do that. And looking back at it now, even though it was like the hardest year of my life, so many good things came out of it. And, I was really hoping to make use for lost time in 2020, but, put on the back burner. But, next year's a new year and with a new attitude and a super healthy body, I'm hoping to get back after it.
So Michael Jordan left basketball to go play baseball and he to rediscover that love of sport, right?
Uh-huh.
So when you were in that hole that you talked about, what got you back to that passion to be like, man, this is absolutely what I love to do?
Yeah. I mean, I never lost that, like I always knew that this is what I wanted to do. And that's why it was painful, right? It was like, well, I don't want this to be over. I don't want like my career to, come to a screeching halt. And, you start, once you get to your 30s, you start to feel a little bit more sense of urgency, just, time. And so I was sort of feeling that pressure as well. But I think the thing that helped me to get through it more was just to get help. I went and like talked to therapists and sports psychologists. Shout out to Red Bull. They helped me so much. They, went to a really awesome kind of like sports psychology / overall 360 health and wellness camp in Santa Monica with the people in the high performance there who just like, roll out the red carpet, give you everything you need to be successful and to get through hard times. And then also the most important thing for me was this feeling of being untethered, to feeling that I had no home, that I was not grounded. And that was a big realization that I had during this period of time. It was like, okay, we need to figure out what our long-term plan is. And I need to commit to a place. We need to build a life and then things, once that part of my unbalanced feeling was taken off the table, everything, my physical health started to fall back into line as well. So that's when we moved here to Portland and bought a house and make it our home. And since then, sort of, I've been feeling so much better. My physical body has come around. My emotional health has come back around. And like I said, I'm desperate to get after it again.
Do you remember the moment when you felt like you were back?
It was more of a gradual thing, but I mean, a good, validation of that was earlier this year before COVID hit. I flew to the Canary Islands for a big race called Transgran Canaria. It's an amazing event, 120 kilometers. So it's about 77 miles, and you basically run from the north end of one of the Canary Islands down to the south end. So it's an amazing thing. You run across this whole island. And anyway, one of the best races in the world, and I was able to finish back on the podium there. I got third place behind two world-class Spaniards. And going into it, I was lacking so much confidence, just like really wondering if I still had what it took. And so to get through that race in proud fashion, and didn't feel 100%, but felt much closer to 100% than I thought I really ever would again. And so for me, that was like, okay, like this is coming back. Just keep working hard.
You mentioned the podium, so you kind of segued perfectly into this next question. Chris mentioned the Ultrarunning article, and the opening line says, quote, "If Dylan Bowman is in a race, odds are pretty good he'll end up on the podium," end quote. So does that put pressure on you now, especially with the year that 2020 has, and you just said you're looking forward to 2021? Does that add a little bit more pressure? Does it add fuel to your fire? Like, when you hear that, what does it make you think?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to sort of have people say that. And one of the things that I've really prided myself on in my career is being really consistent and being that one of those guys who, even though I may not be the most talented dude in the world, like I'll put up a fight, and on a good day, I can run with basically anybody. And that, is something that I've always really tried to have in my career, is that consistency, and also like some range, like beyond, or in our sport, between 50K and 100 miles, having range and being able to compete at all those different distances is something that I find really important, and I always look up to in other athletes, is consistency and that range. And for me, it doesn't put pressure on me. I mean, I love competing. It comes second nature to me because I've been an athlete my whole life. But I think, unlike Michael Jordan, who you've referenced, I definitely don't have that, like, as soon as I start to slow down, I'm going to retire because I can't take it. Like, I love this sport. I love the daily practice of getting out the door. I love training. I love having goals, and running just gives you all that. And so, I would love it if I could be signing up for 100-mile races into my 50s and still be, able to get through them, number one, but enjoying them. That's the most important thing for me. And when it comes to finishing on the podium, I hope that, I still have many years of podiums ahead of me, and I'll keep working hard. But it's not as if it's an external pressure that I don't already put on myself.
Well, hopefully the podium things happen sooner rather than later. Like, I feel like we're coming out of that tunnel a little bit. I hope I'm right. Who knows? Like, as we speak, like, they just shut down California, so who knows? But like, I'm hoping by next year we get out of that podium. So, but before we let you go, let's talk about one of the reasons you're here, your association with Red Bull, and the things you do with Wings for Life and spinal cord research. Let's touch on that while you're here.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. So, obviously Wings for Life is an amazing event, the Wings for Life World Run. It happens in May every year. Of course, just like every other race, this past year was all virtual. And, it's a totally unique format compared to any other race that you'd sign up for. Obviously, whenever you sign up for a race or you're standing on a start line, generally like how far you're going to have to run that day, whether it's 5 kilometers or 100 miles or whatever it is. You kind of know what distance you're going to be running. And for those who don't know, the Wings for Life World Run is totally different. It's set up to where you stand on the start line. You really don't know, unless you're very good at math, really how far you're going to be running that day. The whole concept is that, you start out, and then a catcher car starts after you and starts to accelerate at different speeds at different intervals until it eventually catches up to you, right? So when you're able to do these races in person, they happen simultaneously around the world. So, for example, when I did it last time in Southern California, we started at 4 o'clock in the morning, but, there's people doing it in Europe then, in the afternoon. There's people doing it in Chile at in the middle of the night, whatever time it is there. And it has this amazing energy of like everybody's racing each other at the same time, all over the world, and on different courses, and nobody really has any idea how far they're going. So it's such a cool event in terms of just like having this totally novel format that I think is just like super fun and different compared to, your average sort of the big city marathon or half marathon or whatever the case may be. But the more important thing is the spinal cord mission behind the Wings for Life World Run. And it's been around now for several years, and I wish I knew the figures of how much money it's been able to raise. But it's been absolutely critical in terms of advancing the research as it relates to spinal cord injuries. And, that's one of the most cool things ever. Is not only is it a world-class race, a world-class event, but it has this much bigger mission behind it that's so easy to get behind, and that, we've seen advancements in and we've seen progress because of. And through my several years now of being part of the event, I've been able to get to know some of the Wings for Life ambassadors, people who've had spinal cord injuries and who've benefited from some of the research that's come out of it. And, these people are just some of the most inspiring human beings you could ever imagine. And so, being part of the event is always super fun, and always love to race. But more importantly, it's being part of this bigger mission that Wings for Life is all about, and that is finding a cure for spinal cord injuries. So yeah, May 9th, 2021, we'll be there. I think, I'm not sure if it's going to be totally remote or not yet, or if there's actually going to be real racing going on, but definitely encourage everybody to check out Wings for Life World Run, May 9th, 2021.
Amazing, dude. We'll have to check it out for sure. And I know you kind of shot out, where people can kind of Google search it, but where can people find more about you and the race and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so the race, just Google search it, Wings for Life World Run. That might be the URL. I'm not sure off the top of my head. And yeah, there you can find lots of cool resources as to, what they're researching, how they're going about all that stuff, and what your participation in the event actually contributes to. So definitely encourage people to check that out, see how much of a difference they can make. As it relates to me, you can check me out on, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is Dylan Bow, DYLANBO. I'm on Strava too. I've got my own podcast. It's called The Well. You can find on any podcast platform. If you can't get enough running podcasts, I've got one too. It's super fun. I love it, man. And yeah, that's about it on Strava, Instagram, Twitter, and the podcast. So those are the main places.
So let's go back to the original question when I asked, like, if you were a kid and you found out you were an ultra marathoner, what do you think young Dylan would have been more amazed with? You make a career as an ultra marathoner, or you talk to other people on an interview show and they listen to you talk about running? Like, which one seems more foreign?
The thing is, like, I would be totally shocked, but also I would be so pumped if I was a little kid. Yeah. And I learned that I was a professional athlete in any sport. That's all I wanted to be as a kid. And also, to this day, I still listen to sports talk radio basically every day. And since I was a kid, I've loved sports talk radio. I love listening to podcasts. I was a very early adopter of podcasts, just as a listener as well. So if you would have told, 10-year-old Dylan that he'd be doing the equivalent of sports talk radio, plus also be a professional athlete, he would have been so, so pumped. So dreams do come true, I guess, huh?
I can see you as
go ahead, Kurt.
I was going to say, I could see you as like an afternoon jock taking calls about ultra running. Like Joe from Yonkers calls in and he's like, oh yeah, no, he's not going to run 100 miles. He's going to be awful. Like, I can actually see that. I would listen to that. I don't know.
That would be my dream. Yeah. If I could have like a 2-hour-a-day radio show drive time where I could talk about sports and business and markets and culture, all that stuff. I would have an absolute blast.
Well, there you go. That's the career after this.
Yeah, exactly.
So final question, kind of relating to Chris, with his first question, 10-second elevator pitch. Convince Chris and I to run an ultra marathon.
Guys, you will never in your life have a more powerful experience of life in one single day than if you sign up for a 100-mile race. It would be extremely difficult. You'd have highs, an ecstasy you've never felt before. You'd have lows you've never felt before. You'd be convinced you'd never get through it. But eventually that finish line comes, and there is absolutely nothing better than that feeling of achievement, of crossing a finish line of a 100-mile race and admiring how far you've come, all the hard work you've done, getting through it successfully. I think those feelings translate into real life and make, confronting any challenge off the race course even, that much easier. So ultra marathons, man, it's the best sport in the world. You don't have to run 100 miles. You can run any distance. It's just an amazing sport and something that's given me so much. And I definitely encourage you guys to get on board.
Here's where I'll be in. Like, for me, it's all about the location.
Totally.
Like, you give me the location, you tell me where we're doing it, I'll be like, either in or out there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why I think the sport has grown so much, especially in the Instagram, YouTube generation. These images that you see of people racing through the mountains, these beautiful areas. There's something about it that I think really speaks to, the spirit of, an adventurous person. And the challenge of it, of course, is huge. But, being able to push yourself in beautiful places, makes it a little bit easier. So yeah, definitely when you do the 100-mile, cross that 100-mile Rubicon, make sure you sign up for one in a beautiful place.
I will. I'm going to go to a beautiful place right now. I'm actually going to the grocery store and I'm going to buy every cereal there. I've been inspired by this. Dylan, thanks a lot, man. It was really great talking to you.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, you.
And that brings another episode of We Run This to a close. Nick and I want to thank everybody for listening. If you love the podcast, please share it with friends or leave a review on iTunes. And remember to follow Nick and I on social media. He's at It's Nick Domingo, and I'm at Chris Illuminati on Twitter. Or follow us both on Instagram at WeRunThis_pod. Until next time, see everybody out there.